my first guest, Karen and Tony Vick, exchanged wedding vows in 2015. She was 26, he was 31. They were excited, as you can imagine, to spend the rest of their lives together. But after just 2 years, they received news that would change their future together, or at least what they imagined their future would look like. But that's because Tony was diagnosed with ALS. That is a terminal illness. You may have heard a lot about it, with a life expectancy of around 2 to 5 years. Karen would take on the full-time role of wife and caregiver to the love of her life.
I'm Karen.
And I'm Tony.
And we're the Vicks. What went through my mind when I first saw Tony was like, wow, he's handsome.
Blushing a little.
Our first couple years of just dating was really fun.
We're married on the beach in North Carolina in 2015. It was 2 years and 18 days from our wedding till the diagnosis.
I just remember thinking, like, how are we gonna get through this? Love is resilient. I love the word resilient because it definitely pertains to us. You have to have care 24 hours. Your mind is constantly in a state of care.
The hardest part for me was just learning to ask for the help, and I'm still learning how to do that.
I just love him even more now than I did back then. We're really figuring out our purpose and why we're here on this journey through the pain that we felt. We were given this purpose to share it.
And joining us to share more of their story from Warrensburg, Missouri, please welcome Karen and Tony Vick to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh my goodness, I cannot say, I don't even have the words to capture how much respect I have for both of you. And how you're living your life, but also that you're sharing it with other people. Tony, you've been through more in your 20s and 30s than most couples will go through in a lifetime.
Yeah, definitely. First off, I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to be on your show, and also for increasing and raising awareness for a group of overlooked people who are really almost superhuman, and that is caregivers. But to answer your question, life's gonna sucker punch all of us at one time or another. And our first big sucker punch came with the diagnosis of ALS right after we were married. At that time, our biggest worries, because of how blessed we were, was trying to think about buying our first home together, or, starting a family or advancing our careers. But after that diagnosis, it totally shifted, and we had to pretty much cram an entire lifetime into roughly 2 to 5 years.
Karen, at the time, so many things about Tony's life. Independent, we see the video, he was in the Army Reserves. You're starting out your life together. To his point, you're thinking about first-time home, you're thinking about career and kids, and then he gets this diagnosis. From your perspective, a young bride, when you were in the room alone, what can you share with us about what it really feels like when you're there by yourself and you're thinking, is this our life now? God, is this really what's happening now?
It was hard to wrap my brain around that fact. The things that went through my head is hard to put into words, but just knowing that what we were given is giving us a purpose to hopefully help other people and share that with whoever wants to hear it.
How long did it take you, though, to get to that point? You were just starting out, and now you hear my husband, who seemingly was in great health, an Army Reserve, is now someone who, at worst, I could lose forever in 2 to 5 years with this diagnosis. Or our best case scenario is that I will be his legs, his arms, his voice, his support, his rock. Um, that's a lot to prepare for. That's a lot to talk through in your head.
Yeah, at first it took some time to wrap my head around it. I would say, and luckily we were given that amount of time that I could wrap my head around it. So we were definitely blessed in that aspect. We've been given this time longer than normal
Yeah.
people that are affected by ALS. And so I would say at least like 6 months to a year, it took us really to grasp just the severity of it. And it was it was really hard. Those first few months were really really hard.
I'm curious, Tony. We have some video of you right now buttoning your shirt and doing things. You talked about it being difficult to ask for help. How did you get over that hump, especially knowing it would be your new bride who you needed to ask more than you ever imagined?
Yeah, that was definitely super, super hard in the beginning. And a lot of it's come with just, Lord giving us blessings and helping to ease into the transition. But I was always very independent, did things on my own, and didn't ask for help very often. And now I'm very dependent and I have to ask for help for anything from cooking food, feeding myself, bathing myself, getting dressed.
Hmm.
So that was definitely a very difficult part of transitioning for me.
Karen, I thought a lot about the fact in Vows, it's for better, for worse, richer, for poor, in sickness and in health. You were challenged with the health part early on. Did you ever have to sit down with Tony and say, I'm not going anywhere? Or did he ever say, I know this is a lot?
Honestly, we just never really had to have that kind of conversation. I feel like we both knew I was in it for the long run. Um, I had lots of concerns, of course. I had just opened a business. Was I going to have to sell it? Um, we had just bought a brand new travel trailer to spend our weekends at the lake.
Mm.
What were we going to do with that? We own a rental house. What am I going to do if he dies? It's kind of just a trickle effect of emotions that we went through. But I feel like together we just never had that doubt, like we weren't going to make it.
Were you worried, Tony? I mean, it seems like as a couple, there was never any doubt, but you hear people, whether it's a parent who says to a child, I don't ever want to be a burden, or assume these things, even though when you love somebody, they are never a burden. You're going to do whatever it takes. But were you ever insecure, I guess would be the word, about the responsibility that she would take on, and would it be too much for her?
Yeah, definitely. So not so much that she couldn't handle it, but not often you get to brag about your wife on national television. And, she's been my anchor and continues to be my anchor through this storm.
Oh,
We've been blessed in so many ways, and when you exchange those vows, it's not just a covenant between you and your spouse, but you guys and the Lord as well. And I know He's looking down and smiling at her for the amazing job that she's done.
well, I know that you've shared your story on social media and it's resonated so much. That's how my producers learned of you and brought your journey to me. And, you know, the right one walked into your life at the right time. And I mean that to both of you. And thank you so much for sharing this story because so many folks are going through exactly that, and they'll be inspired to see you stand here together as a beautiful couple. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.